God bless everybody today. It is September 3rd of 2021. It is 6:50 a.m. Central Time. I think this is a pretty important weekend for the markets in general, but I also think it's an extremely important weekend for the crypto markets. Um, this is a fairly important weekend in the sense that we get some extremely important job numbers. These job numbers are going to indicate whether the Fed is going to start to taper, how much they're going to taper, and whether they're going to have to start to raise interest rates in the near future before the end of this year. Also, bond rates are starting to move up. 10-year rates are moving up fairly quickly and could potentially be at around 2% by the end of this year. That's going to cause a lot of pressure on the Fed to really start to stop buying bonds and treasuries and different things like that, and starting to really pull back on all this infusion of money into the markets. This week's extremely important in the sense that with the job numbers, we have a long weekend to digest the information that's being placed out here through the markets. So if the markets say we're at 775,000 estimated payroll, farm payroll jobs, and it comes in lower, that gives the Fed the ability to slow down the tapering and the amount of pullback. But if the job numbers are stronger, this will cause them to have to taper faster, quicker, and start to raise interest rates faster. These numbers could be revised next month, and so they could either go up or down. I believe that in this case, what we will potentially see is a better number than 775,000. This would then force them to actually have to act much faster and start a quicker tapering, and then potentially interest rate hikes much faster. But we also are walking into a COVID season with a flu season, a Delta, and a new variant coming out. And so I have a feeling the economies really aren't as strong, and they're going to have to start pull back, and we're starting to see lockdowns and travel bans and all kinds of different things as they're opening up schools. And another thing that we have to look at is wage inflation and different things like this. Actually, a lot of people aren't going back to work, especially women, because they can't get their kids in school. So if they can't get the kids back in school, they can't go back to work and pay for their daycare and different things like that. A lot of people aren't taking the kids because of periodic outbreaks and different things through regions. So we're in a pretty precarious place. Another thing that I think is extremely important that I don't think people are seeing is this. So before we go look at the Bitcoin charts and what I think it's going to do, and I'm no expert at this. You know, if you're looking for financial advice through me, good luck with that. I'm just showing you that there's connections and that potentially the markets are going to have issues. And I've talked about how the crypto system could basically turn into a beast system as we move into the next few years and potentially see Antichrist come out. Okay, so in the Jewish calendar, I think it's extremely important. You're getting your job numbers on the 3rd. You're going to have a long weekend. And then right after this, on the 7th of the weekend, or on the Tuesday after the long weekend of the Labor Day, you're going to see Rosh Hashanah, or the Feast of Trumpets. I think that's extremely important because I think it's a warning from God that this is really going to start to create issues with the markets, and that if this is a strong number that they report today, and it's over 775,000, I don't know what the number will be. But if it is a strong number, because we are coming out of a strong or third quarter before we start to move into flu season and potential lockdowns and stagnation again, as we're starting to see China slow down, we're starting to see massive supply chain breakdowns and other things like this, which are causing issues, which are causing layoffs because they don't have the parts to build things, so they're laying people off even though, they want to come back online. They can't because they don't have the parts to build this thing. But if we get a extremely good number here, that's going to signal to the markets that the Fed is going to have to quickly do some tapering, and that they're going to have to start to raise interest rates to offset this thing because they're already behind the curve on this. And it takes time for Fed policy to actually migrate through the system. So if we get a really good job number, that is going to matter into the weekend. If it's a low number, then the Fed will then be able to ease back and say, look, we don't have to taper as much because the numbers are soft, and so, we've got a longer period of time to deal with this. If you get a strong number, the markets will digest this for 3 days and walk into the Feast of Trumpets. And the Feast of Trumpets lasts from the 7th to the 8th. But then we have Yom Kippur and then the Feast of Tabernacles. That also, we're talking about the fall feast. So this is extremely important too, because on my chart I show you that this is the start of that Shemitah cycle that I was talking about. And so if you go to my calendar, or my timeline flow chart on the timing of Daniel 1, 8, 12, Psalm 90, 10, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, and you zoom into this area here, like I said, June 30th was that start of the 2300 days in my world, from the Feast of Tabernacles at October 17th, 2027. You work 2300 days back to June 30th. But look what happens as you move into this calendar. You start to realize that this is pretty important here. And I brought this up for a reason, because now we're starting to work into the sabbatical year. And that is the Feast of Trumpets. Okay? And that starts on Tuesday, right after the long Labor Day weekend. This was the destruction in the past of the Second Temple, and we start to see the fortunes of Israel fade and slide. And then in the next year, we start to see that Babylonian Empire rise, or in this case, the Ottoman Empire rise, and Erdogan is going to get his crown before long. And I've talked about this Daniel 8 war coming up in the next 4, 6, 8, 12 months, within a year at the most. I think it's going to happen potentially by the end of this year still. But by spring equinox, I think at the latest, we'll start to see this happen. So it's extremely important. Now, the Shemitah year runs all the way to the end of 2027 in 2027 in September. So if you come back out and you look at that calendar over here, you'll realize that the 6-year SMETA cycle end from the start over here is September 1st through the 3rd of 2027, right before the Feast of Trumpets on the end here. So I think this is important, and so I think the markets are going to start to have issues, and this is going to start to see a potential crash, which is then going to start to see a conversion of a change in the way the markets are, so that we start to convert it into a beast system over time. And we're going to start to see a lot of the markets struggle a lot here. So let's go check out Bitcoin's maps and charts. So on this chart, it's followed in general like I thought it would, but we've hit this one peak, because I think they're taking it to the extremes. We hit this one peak at 50,500. We've actually hit it twice. I'll show you that on Bitcoin's map or chart. This number is real similar to this number. So I do believe we are in the Accumulation 1 chart. One of the reasons I say this, and some people think we're in the distribution chart, we came into this method with a major outflow. If you go to the distribution chart, it's a major inflow. We're actually seeing a major rise before you go into the actual method, where the accumulation schematic chart is a major outflow before you actually start to work into the harmonics here. So I've never really thought that we are in a distribution chart, and that we've always been in accumulation if we can figure out where we are in this chart. Now see, they've taken it down to the extreme here, but they've taken it to an extreme stream here. I've added this line because I wanted you to understand that they've taken this to a higher level than I thought they would, but I think it's a fear factor thing. I think they're trying to get everybody to buy in, as they think it's going up over 50, and this is actually coming into phase E over here, but they're not here. Okay, they're actually here. If the Labor Day weekend pans out like I think, and they have strong numbers, and they have to start tapering back, and we start to walk into flu season, we start to see major chain disruptions, supply chain disruptions, and different things like this, we're going to start to see the markets really start to struggle. If that happens, I believe then we will start to see this move to the spring. Now, I indicated that the spring might occur between August 12th and September 8th, but wow, look at that. September 8th is the date that I was talking about the Feast of Trumpets being on September 7th and 8th. So I think there is a warning. I don't necessarily know it's going to crash on September 8th, but I do believe that this will cause a lot of friction in the markets, and it will cause it to laterally go down over time to the point where it will hit spring, maybe even by the end of this month, because there's a Fed meeting like on September 22nd where they're really going to have to digest all this information and figure out where they are and what actions they're going to take. And then we're going to have a revision of numbers next month. When we get the September numbers, we're going to get a revision for August, and that could be a higher number than what we originally got if it's a strong number. And if it becomes even a stronger number through revision, that could be a real problem for the Fed. So I think there's a lot going on here, If you look at Bitcoin's actual chart on Kraken, you can sort of see the numbers that I'm talking about. Here's that 28,816.6. Then we went up to 50,500. So I thought it was interesting that we've actually hit this number twice. You see that? How crazy is that? These numbers are almost right on. I mean, so we're bouncing off this 50,000 wall, and we're hitting major resistance, and then it's coming back down. Okay, but we're also walking into a major apex here, and so I think as we see, we walk into the 7th. Look at that. We walk into the 7th. We potentially could see a major downturn here as the markets start to struggle with these numbers. And it is about the job numbers. This is what the Fed's looking at. They want full employment, but they can't get full employment if they can't get people back to work. They can't get the kids back to school because the mothers will have to stay home, and they can't get people to maintain jobs if the supply chains are broken. So there's a lot going on in the next month here, and we're going to see how this plays out. And like I say, I'm not an expert. I don't know exactly how this is going to pan out. I do believe that we're struggling in the markets. We have not seen a major correction in these markets of 5% or more for a while now. And there's going to be a major pullback, I believe. But when you see these numbers being manipulated, 50,500, 50,500, you know, to the extremes, as we see in the chart, I believe we're going to see a major correction in this market soon. God bless everybody. I just wanted to do an update. This is the 13th video I've done on that, which is maybe a bad omen in itself. We'll see how this turns out. We'll see how it goes through the weekend, and we'll see how the next month, working into the 22nd on the Fed meeting, plays out. But I believe this is starting to look pretty awkward and could potentially fall apart fairly fast as we walk into the spring. And I still believe I'm in the accumulation schematic 1 chart of the Wyckoff method, and that we've never really gone out of this. A lot of people think we're heading into phase E right now, but I still say we're in this mode right here, working through lateralization to the spring coming up within the next few weeks. God bless everybody. Have a great day.